Hey guys, tonight we begin with the ancient Egyptian doctor. A profession where you're expected to heal broken bones, fight infections, interpret divine will, and somehow make all of that look confident. So before you get comfortable, take a moment, like the video, and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your day begins before the sun because the sun at least has the decency to hesitate before committing to another scorching Egyptian day. You, however, do not get that luxury. If you are an ancient Egyptian doctor, sleeping in is not an option. Pain does not respect schedules. Fever does not care about your rest, and childbirth will absolutely begin at the most inconvenient moment possible. You rise from your sleeping mat with the enthusiasm of someone who already knows today will involve blood complaints and at least one patient who insists they followed your instructions when you personally watch them do the opposite. The air is still cool. Egypt's brief daily apology, and you enjoy it while it lasts. First comes washing. This is essential not because anyone understands bacteria but because cleanliness equals order and order keeps the universe from unraveling into divine chaos. Also, the priests say you wash your hands carefully, knowing full well that by midday they will be covered in substances no amount of rinsing will emotionally prepare you for. Being a doctor puts you in an awkward social category. You are respected but not powerful, trusted but suspiciously watched. People believe you possess knowledge but also believe that if something goes wrong, you probably annoyed a god by blinking incorrectly. This means your morning routine requires confidence, humility, and a quiet internal promise not to anger any invisible forces before breakfast. You mentally review the possibilities for the day. Broken bones, manageable; cuts, acceptable; fevers, concerning; infections, deeply annoying. There is also the mysterious category of something is wrong, but I cannot explain what, which will inevitably arrive, accompanied by dramatic sighing. Outside, the city is already waking up. Bakers are at work. Laborers are heading toward construction sites where they will absolutely injure themselves in new and exciting ways. Somewhere a man is lifting something far too heavy and thinking, "This seems fine." Moments before proving you wrong. You pause before opening your door, not to pray exactly, but to brace yourself. You remind yourself that you are trained. You have scrolls. You have remedies that work more often than they fail, which by ancient standards is an incredible success rate. You are not guessing. You are practicing medicine. Early, imperfect, slightly chaotic medicine. Still, you know how this goes. Some patients will walk out relieved. Some will not. And by sunset, you will carry both outcomes equally because doctors do not get the luxury of celebrating too loudly or grieving too openly. You open the door. Someone is already waiting and they do not look patient. After opening the door and confirming that yes, people are already waiting and yes, they all look impatient, you turn back inside to gather your tools. This is the part of the job where modern viewers tend to relax until they realize what ancient Egyptian medical equipment actually consists of. There is no gleaming metal tray, no polished instruments, no reassuring clink of stainless steel. Instead, you work with copper blades, wooden probes, linen bandages, stone pallets, and jars filled with substances best described as confidently experimental. These tools are not decorative. They are practical. They have been used before, sometimes successfully. You inspect your copper knife. Copper is excellent. It cuts, it lasts, and it occasionally kills bacteria without anyone knowing why. This is what passes for accidental genius. You wipe the blade carefully, not because you believe it is sterile, but because it feels responsible and gives patients confidence. Confidence, you have learned, is a powerful painkiller. Next come the bandages. Linen, clean, folded neatly, reused when absolutely necessary, and never discussed out loud. You soak some in resin or honey, depending on the injury. Honey, in particular, is one of your proudest tools. It works suspiciously well, which makes you trust it deeply while understanding it not at all. Your jars line the wall like a shelf of questionable optimism. Animal fat, ground herbs, oils infused with plants whose names you barely remember, but whose effects you have observed. Some reduce swelling, some soothe pain, some do absolutely nothing but smell impressive. You keep them anyway. Patients like options. Then there are the scrolls. Papyrus texts copied and recopied by generations of physicians. They describe symptoms, treatments, outcomes, and instructions written in the careful language of people who have seen things go wrong. These scrolls are not theory. They are records. Someone tried this remedy. Someone lived. Someone didn't. Notes were taken. You review them quickly, not because you need reminding, but because ritual matters, preparation matters. The act of checking your tools is part medicine, part performance. Patients need to see that you are organized. Order reassures them that you know what you are doing. Even when the situation is deeply questionable, with everything gathered, you take one last look around your workspace. It is ready. You are ready. Or at least as ready as anyone can be in a world where illness is half physical and half divine mood swing. You take a breath. Then you call in your first patient, hoping they are bleeding in a way you recognize. Your first patient steps inside before you even finish sitting down, which immediately tells you two things. 1. This injury is serious. 2. This man has been waiting long enough to decide politeness is optional. He is a laborer, which explains the dust, the sweat, and the expression of someone who has already tried ignoring the problem and failed. His arm hangs at an angle that arms are not designed to explore. This is unfortunate, but also reassuring. Bones are honest. Bones break in recognizable ways. Bones do not pretend they are fine while secretly plotting your downfall. You gesture for him to sit. He does not sit. He hovers, grimacing, breathing carefully, as if moving too quickly might cause his arm to detach entirely. You examine the limbs slowly, pressing and rotating just enough to confirm what you already know. He hisses through his teeth. You nod sympathetically. This is the ancient equivalent of bedside manner. The diagnosis is clear. A fracture, not shattered, not compound, just broken. In your profession, this counts as a good start to the day. You explain what will happen next in a calm voice. This is important. The body reacts better when the mind believes it is in capable hands. Also, panicking patients flail and flailing patients make your job harder. You recite a short incantation while preparing the splint. The words are familiar, traditional, and comforting. They are not strictly necessary for the bone, but they are extremely necessary for everyone else in the room. Then comes the part no one enjoys. You pull. The arm shifts back into place with a dull, wet sound that makes everyone pause to reconsider their life choices. The laborer gasps, then exhales slowly, as if his soul briefly left and decided to return. You do not apologize. Apologies invite doubt. You simply continue working. You bind the arm with linen soaked in resin, securing the splint tightly, but not cruelly. Experience has taught you the difference. You finish by wrapping the final layer with care, then placing your hands gently on the bandage as if sealing the outcome. You instruct him to rest the arm. He nods. You know he will not. Before leaving, he thanks you, relief washing over his face. This is the part that keeps you doing the job. Not the spells, not the scrolls. This moment when pain recedes and hope takes its place. As he exits, you make a quick note in your mind. Clean fracture. Set early. Good chances. A strong start. The next patient is already standing in the doorway. The next patient steps forward more cautiously, which immediately worries you. Confident injuries announce themselves. Dangerous ones sneak in politely. She reveals a wound on her leg. Not large, not dramatic, but open. The kind of injury that looks manageable and then quietly ruins everyone's week. You lean closer, inspecting the edges. Redness, swelling, heat. These are signs you recognize, even if you don't yet have a word like infection to curse under your breath. This is the kind of case that separates luck from skill. You clean the wound thoroughly with wine. It stings. She flinches. You do not apologize. Pain means the area is still alive, which is encouraging. The wine washes away dirt, dust, and whatever else decided to take up residence inside her leg. You work carefully, knowing that what you remove now may decide whether she walks away or returns much worse. Next comes honey. You apply it generously, spreading it into the wound and watching it settle. Honey is one of your quiet miracles. You don't know why it works, only that wounds treated with honey heal more often than those that aren't. This is enough. Medicine does not require understanding. It requires results. You add herbs chosen from experience rather than faith. These reduce swelling, calm irritation, and smell convincingly medicinal. The smell matters. Patients trust things that smell like effort. As you wrap the wound with linen, you speak softly, offering reassurance. You also recite a short spell. Again, not because the wound demands magic, but because fear makes people tense and tension slows healing. The spell gives the patient something to believe in while the honey does the real work. You instruct her to keep the wound clean, dry, and covered. She nods. You suspect she will do her best. Unlike the laborer with the broken arm, she understands what is at stake. This is the moment you dislike most. Once she leaves, the outcome is no longer entirely in your hands. If the wound worsens, the gods will be blamed. If it heals, the treatment will be praised. You will accept both with professional silence. As she leaves, you clean your hands again, carefully, methodically. You do not rush this part. Wounds have a way of returning if you invite them. You glance toward the doorway. Another patient waits. This one is squinting. The next patient squints before you even ask what's wrong, which in Egypt is usually a strong hint. The land is bright, dusty, and unforgiving. The sun reflects off sand, stone, and water with equal enthusiasm, and the wind carries grit directly into places grit has no business being. Eyes suffer constantly. He sits carefully, blinking as if each movement might offend his face. You ask him to open his eyes wider. He does not enjoy this request. You lean closer, examining the redness, the swelling, the faint discharge. None of this surprises you. If anything, you're surprised more people can still see it all. Eye infections are common, persistent, and deeply irritating. They rarely kill, but they ruin days, weeks, and sometimes lives if ignored. And ignoring them is popular because people prefer pretending problems will solve themselves. They rarely do. You prepare an ointment made from copper salts mixed with honey. The copper helps. The honey helps. Why they help is still a mystery, but the results are hard to argue with. You stir carefully, making sure the mixture looks serious and authoritative. Presentation matters when you're about to apply something to someone's eyeball. You warn him that it will sting. He nods bravely. It stings anyway. He flinches, grips the edge of the stool, and mutters something that may or may not be a prayer. You apply the ointment with practiced precision. Too much causes irritation. Too little causes disappointment. You aim for confidence. You instruct him to avoid rubbing his eyes. He nods again. You both know this instruction will be ignored within the hour. Rubbing is irresistible. You say it anyway because it's your duty. You also recite a brief incantation. This serves two purposes. 1. It reassures the patient that divine forces are involved. 2. It gives you a moment to let the ointment settle without being blamed for the discomfort. Sometimes these treatments work beautifully. Swelling fades, vision clears, gratitude follows. Other times, the condition lingers. When that happens, it is described as strong, which is ancient medical language for "we tried." Before he leaves, you remind him to return if the pain worsens. He agrees. You suspect he will wait too long because hope and denial are powerful companions. Once he's gone, you rinse your tools and hands again. Eye work demands cleanliness, even if no one fully understands why. You glance toward the doorway once more. Someone is holding their stomach. This day is not slowing down. The next patient enters already holding their stomach, which is rarely a good sign, but extremely common. Stomach problems are the background noise of ancient life. If someone is not bleeding, coughing, or squinting, they are probably nauseous. You invite him to sit. He does so carefully, as if his insides might fall out if he moves too quickly. He explains the symptoms in detail. Cramping, discomfort, and a deep sense of betrayal by his own body. You listen patiently, nodding at the appropriate moments. This part is important. People feel better when someone appears confident about their suffering. The cause is rarely mysterious. Too much beer, bread that was stored too long, water drawn from a place that should not be named. Sometimes all three. Egypt provides food abundantly, but it also provides opportunities for digestive regret. You consult your remedies. Stomach treatments are more about balance than cure. Herbs to calm the gut, instructions to rest, advice to avoid certain foods that the patient will absolutely eat again tomorrow. You prepare a mixture designed to soothe rather than punish, which is already an improvement over some earlier traditions. You explain the treatment carefully. You tell him to drink the mixture slowly. You tell him to avoid heavy food. You tell him to rest. He nods, clearly planning to do exactly one of those things, and even then only briefly. You also offer a short prayer, not because the stomach requires divine intervention, but because stomach pain makes people anxious and anxiety makes stomach pain worse. This is an observation you have made repeatedly, even if you don't have a scroll explaining it. As he leaves, you remind him to return if the pain worsens. He thanks you, relieved to have an explanation, even if the explanation is, your bread betrayed you. You wash your hands again. Stomach cases require caution. They also require patience. Some improve quickly. Some linger. Some return after the patient ignores every instruction you gave them and drinks questionable beer with friends. You glance toward the doorway. Another person waits. This one looks uncomfortable in a way that suggests either fever or embarrassment. Possibly both. You take a breath. The day continues. The next patient hesitates at the doorway, which immediately tells you this is not a simple case. Straightforward injuries walk in confidently. Magical ones hover. He finally steps forward and lowers his voice as if illness might overhear him. He explains his symptoms carefully. Fatigue, strange dreams, a sense that something is wrong in a way that refuses to be specific. Nothing hurts exactly. Nothing looks broken. Everything feels off. This is the moment when medicine politely hands the problem to religion and says, "You take this one." You listen without interrupting. You've learned that these cases require respect. If you dismiss them, the patient will leave unconvinced. If you panic, everyone else will panic, too. You nod slowly, examining him while also examining the situation. There is no wound to clean, no bone to set, no eye to ointment. This is imbalance. In ancient Egypt, imbalance is serious business. You consult with a priest because this is how things work. Medicine and magic are not rivals here. They are co-workers. Sometimes medicine leads. Sometimes magic takes the front. Often they walk side by side pretending not to judge each other. The priest suggests divine displeasure. You suggest exhaustion and poor diet. Both explanations are accepted. You prepare a treatment that satisfies everyone involved. Herbs for the body, ritual words for the soul, and instructions to rest, which will be ignored immediately. You recite a spell with professional seriousness. The words are ancient, comforting, and deliberately vague. Vague spells age better. The patient relaxes visibly. This alone may help more than the herbs. You give him a charm to carry, not because you believe the charm will cure him, but because belief is powerful, and people heal better when they feel protected. Also, it prevents him from returning tomorrow, asking why he still feels strange. As he leaves, you feel the familiar tension lift slightly. These cases drain energy. There is no clear outcome, no satisfying conclusion, just effort. You make a mental note. Patterns matter. If more people arrive with similar complaints, you will adjust your approach. This is how knowledge grows, not through certainty, but through repetition. You wash your hands again because ritual applies to doctors too. Outside, the sun is climbing higher. Heat presses in. More people gather. And somewhere in the crowd, a child begins to cry. You already know what that means. The sound of a crying child cuts through the day faster than any announcement. Adults complain. Children announce emergencies. You straighten instinctively, already preparing yourself for a situation where emotions will arrive before symptoms. A parent rushes in carrying a child who is hot to the touch and far too quiet between sobs. Fever. Always worrying. Fevers in children are unpredictable, stubborn, and deeply unfair. You place a hand on the child's forehead, feeling the heat radiate back at you like a warning. You examine carefully. Skin, eyes, breathing. You ask gentle questions. How long has this lasted? What has the child eaten? Has anything changed recently? The parent answers quickly, anxiously, sometimes contradicting themselves. This is normal. Fear makes memory unreliable. You prepare a treatment designed to cool and soothe, light herbal mixtures, gentle applications, nothing harsh. Children are not small adults. You have learned this the hard way. What helps a grown laborer could overwhelm a child completely. You speak softly while working because calm spreads. Children respond to tone long before they understand words. The child relaxes slightly. This feels like progress. You do not celebrate yet. Parents watch your every movement. They are silent now, holding their breath as if noise itself might break the spell. You are aware of their trust. It weighs more than any diagnosis. You recite a short prayer, not theatrically, quietly. This is not performance. This is reassurance for the parents, for the child, and for yourself. You do not know how this will end. Anyone who says they do is lying. You instruct the parents to keep the child cool, hydrated, and watched closely. You tell them what signs to look for. You tell them when to return. You repeat yourself. Parents under stress forget instructions immediately. When they leave, you stand still for a moment longer than usual. Child cases linger. They follow you through the rest of the day, living in the back of your thoughts. You wash your hands again slowly, carefully. This is not habit. It is grounding. Outside, the crying has stopped. This is good for now. You glance toward the doorway. Another patient waits. This one smells like animals, which usually means trouble. The next patient announces himself before speaking. He smells like animals, sweat, and a life spent making decisions that seemed reasonable at the time. This usually means one thing: an injury acquired while working with something that had horns, hooves, or opinions. You examine him carefully. There is swelling. There is bruising. There is pain that does not line up neatly with anything visible. This is where medicine becomes uncomfortable. Not everything presents clearly. Not every problem gives you the courtesy of a simple explanation. You ask questions. How did it happen? When did it start? Did it hurt immediately or later? The answers are vague, contradictory, and occasionally heroic. You nod anyway. Patients do not come for judgment. They come for reassurance that their body has not permanently betrayed them. You palpate the area gently, watching his face more than the injury. Pain tells you more than words. Nothing feels broken. Nothing feels torn. But something is wrong. This is the dangerous middle ground where experience replaces certainty. You explain that rest is required. This is rarely popular. You apply a pus meant to reduce swelling and bind the area carefully. You do not promise a quick recovery. Promises are how doctors lose credibility. This is one of those cases where outcome depends on things you cannot control. Will he rest? Probably not. Will the swelling go down? Maybe. Will he return tomorrow insisting it is worse? Almost certainly. You are aware always of the limits of what you know. Ancient Egyptian medicine is advanced for its time, but it is not magic. You cannot see inside the body. You cannot fight infection once it spreads. You work with observation, repetition, and experience. This is not ignorance. It is realism. Some illnesses resolve on their own. Some do not. Some respond beautifully to treatment. Others stubbornly ignore everything you do. The difference is not always obvious. You make a mental note of the symptoms. You store them away. If another patient arrives with similar complaints, you will connect the dots. This is how knowledge grows. Slowly, quietly, without applause. As the man leaves, he thanks you. You accept it politely, knowing that gratitude does not guarantee recovery. Still, it matters. You wash your hands again, not because you believe it controls outcomes, but because it gives you the illusion of order in a world that resists it. You glance outside. The day is moving toward afternoon. The heat is rising. The cases will change and you are only halfway through. By the time the afternoon heat settles in, you do something that quietly separates you from guesswork healers and enthusiastic amateurs. You write things down. Not dramatically, not poetically, carefully, methodically. Like someone who has learned that memory lies, but ink usually doesn't. You unroll a sheet of papyrus and review the day so far. Broken arm, clean fracture, set early, good outcome expected, assuming the patient ignores your instructions in a reasonable way rather than an ambitious one. Wound treated with honey. Eye infection addressed. Stomach complaints noted. Child with fever, watch closely. These notes are not for storytelling. They are for survival. Egyptian medicine takes record-keeping seriously. Every remedy you use has history behind it. Someone tried it before. Someone lived long enough to say, yes, that helped. Or quietly disappeared from the records. Either way, lessons were learned. You copy remedies carefully, preserving wording exactly. Changing phrasing carelessly is how spells stop working and treatments lose credibility. Precision matters even when you don't fully understand why. This is where medicine starts to feel less mystical and more professional. You notice patterns. Certain wounds heal faster with honey. Certain fevers respond to cooling treatments. Certain stomach pains reliably follow bad beer and bad decisions. You don't have theories. You have observations. And observations are powerful. Writing also gives you a moment to breathe. Patients are loud. Paper is quiet. Ink does not interrupt you with new symptoms halfway through a sentence. For a brief stretch of time, you are alone with your thoughts, your notes. And the comforting illusion that the day is under control. You pause occasionally to sharpen your reed pen, blowing away fibers and wondering how something so small ends up deciding how clearly future doctors understand today. Knowledge survives because someone took the time to write instead of rushing to the next emergency. You glance up occasionally. The doorway remains active. People come and go. The day does not wait for documentation, but you persist anyway because this slow accumulation of experience is how medicine advances even when no one notices. When you finish, you roll the papyrus carefully and set it aside. These notes may help you tomorrow or next season or long after you are gone. That thought is quietly comforting. You wash your hands again, stand and prepare to face the next wave. The afternoon is not finished with you yet. As the afternoon stretches on, the work changes. Not in difficulty, but in tone. The early cases were urgent, loud, and obvious. Now come the ones that linger, the people who return, hovering in the doorway, unsure whether they are bothering you or saving themselves. A familiar face appears. Someone you treated earlier. They are not worse, but they are not better either. This is the most uncomfortable outcome. Improvement is celebrated. Decline is mourned. Stagnation simply stares at you, waiting. You examine them again, carefully, quietly, resisting the urge to rush. This is where responsibility presses hardest. They are watching you not just for treatment but for reassurance that they were right to trust you in the first place. Being a doctor in ancient Egypt means carrying an invisible ledger. Every success adds weight. Every failure adds more. There is no way to set it down. You do not get to say I am tired or this is beyond me even when it is. You simply adjust your tone, refine your approach and try again. You change the treatment slightly. A different herb, a different application, a longer rest recommendation that will still be ignored but feels morally necessary to say. You explain calmly, confidently. Doubt spreads faster than illness. People expect certainty from you. They believe that knowledge looks like confidence, not hesitation. So, you do not hesitate even when you are thinking very carefully. The patient leaves again, hopeful enough to keep going. You remain, sitting still for a moment longer than usual. These are the cases that follow you home. The ones without dramatic beginnings or endings. The ones that depend on time, luck, and whether the universe feels cooperative. You glance at your tools. They are the same as this morning. Simple, honest, limited. You work within those limits every day and you do not resent them. Limits define the work. Outside, voices rise and fall. The city moves on. People live, argue, eat, and make decisions that will eventually bring them back to your doorway. You wash your hands again, not out of habit, but because it feels like resetting something internal. A pause between responsibility and action. There are still patients waiting and they believe you can help. That belief is heavier than any tool you carry. Just when you think the day might slow down, it does the opposite. The afternoon brings a second wave of patients. Not because illness follows schedules, but because people spend the morning ignoring problems and the afternoon admitting defeat. The first arrives with a bite. Animal bites are never good news. This one comes from a goat, which is somehow both impressive and concerning. Goats, you have learned, bite with enthusiasm and zero remorse. You inspect the wound carefully. Teeth marks, broken skin, redness already forming. You feel the familiar tightening in your chest that says, this could go badly if we're unlucky. You clean the wound thoroughly, wine first. The patient hisses. You apply honey. The patient relaxes. Honey has that effect on wounds and morale. You bind the area firmly and remind him to keep it clean. He promises. You have heard promises before. Next comes a cut from a farming tool. Then a burn. Then swelling from a fall that was not that serious until it very clearly was. None of these injuries are dramatic on their own. Together they form the steady rhythm of a working society, slowly injuring itself in predictable ways. You move efficiently now. The hesitation of morning is gone. Your hands know what to do before your thoughts finish forming. Clean, apply, bind, reassure, repeat. This is not rushing. It is experience settling in. The heat presses harder as the sun lowers. Sweat sticks to your skin. The room smells of herbs, linen, and human anxiety. You drink water when you remember to. You remind yourself to eat later. Hunger can wait. People cannot. One patient arrives too late. Not dying, but worse. Infection has already spread. The skin is hot, the swelling angry. You do what you can, knowing full well that outcomes are uncertain. You do not lie. You speak carefully. Honesty delivered gently is its own kind of treatment. Between patients, you adjust supplies. More bandages, less honey. Always less honey than you would like. You silently thank the bees for their ongoing cooperation. The line outside finally begins to thin. Voices fade. Footsteps retreat. You realize you have been standing for longer than feels reasonable. This part of the day is exhausting. Not because the work is hard, but because the stakes never change. Every person matters equally. There are no small cases when you are the only option. As the last patient leaves, you pause, leaning against the wall. The rush is over. The consequences, however, will unfold overnight, and tomorrow morning you will hear about them. As the flow of patients finally slows, you do something deceptively simple. You clean not hurriedly, not carelessly, thoroughly, deliberately, as if the act itself is part of the medicine. In ancient Egypt, cleanliness is not a preference. It is a principle. Order must be restored at the end of the day, or chaos will happily linger. You wash your hands again, even though you have already washed them countless times. Water runs over skin that feels older than it did this morning. You scrub beneath your nails, rinse away dried honey, resin, and whatever else the day decided to leave behind. You do not know about microbes, but you know that clean hands feel right, and rightness matters. You clean your tools next. Copper blades wiped carefully. Wooden splints set back in place. Linen bandages folded, sorted, and quietly judged for whether they can be reused without tempting fate. Jars are sealed. Herbs are returned to their containers. Nothing is left out. Disorder invites mistakes tomorrow. This process is calming, predictable. Unlike patience, tools behave. You also perform small rituals. Nothing dramatic, nothing theatrical, a quiet word of thanks, a brief acknowledgement of the gods, not begging, not bargaining, just recognition. The day could have gone worse. That is worth acknowledging. Cleanliness in Egyptian thought is tied to mate, cosmic balance. You may not control outcomes, but you can control your actions. You can end the day with order instead of exhaustion-fueled chaos. That matters more than it sounds. As you work, the noise outside softens. The city shifts into evening. Voices lower. Footsteps slow. Somewhere someone is cooking. Somewhere else someone is regretting a decision that will bring them back to you tomorrow. You take a moment to sit, not collapse. Sit. There is a difference. You stretch your hands, roll your shoulders, and feel the quiet weight of the day settle in. Not crushing, just present. This part of the job is invisible. No one thanks you for clean tools. No one applauds folded linen. But tomorrow's success depends on what you do now. You finish, stand, and look around your workspace. It is ready again. Reset, balanced. The day is almost over. But before rest comes reflection, because the mind, unlike the body, does not turn off easily. And you still have one more thing to face. As evening settles in, the world grows quieter, but your mind does not follow instructions. Bodies may rest, but thoughts have a habit of pacing. You sit alone for a moment, letting the sounds of the city fade into something manageable, and take stock of the day you just survived. Some patients improved. You can feel it. The laborer with the broken arm will sleep tonight without sharp pain. The woman with the wound has a chance. The child's fever might break. These are victories, even if no one announces them. You allow yourself a small private nod. Nothing dramatic. Doctors who celebrate too loudly invite disappointment. Other cases linger in your thoughts. The swelling that might worsen. The infection that arrived too late. The patient who promised to rest with a tone that suggested they absolutely would not. These are not failures, not yet. But they carry weight. Medicine does not offer clean endings. It offers probabilities and patience. You offer thanks to the gods, but not in the way people imagine. This is not begging or bargaining. You are not asking for miracles. You are acknowledging endurance, yours and theirs, gratitude without expectation, appreciation without illusion. You have learned that hope is useful, but certainty is dangerous. People believe doctors have answers. What you actually have are tools, experience, and the discipline to keep trying even when outcomes refuse to cooperate. That truth does not disappoint you anymore. It grounds you. You think briefly about the trust placed in you.